Bibliographies are an important resource when you're trying to track down the literature on a topic. Bibliographies are found in a number of places: in the backs of monographs and essays, at the ends of journal articles, and at the ends of dissertations. Sometimes bibliographies are published in journals or in gray literature as independent pieces of scholarship. Such bibliographies may include summaries about each item listed. These are called annotated bibliographies. This video will specifically address book-length bibliographies that have been prepared as guides to research in particular topics. These are published by various academic presses, usually in a series with a series title like Biobibliographies in Music, or Composer Resource Manuals, or Routledge Music Bibliographies, or sometimes with the words Sourcebook or Guide to Research in the individual volume title. Because these guides often include much more than a simple bibliography, in this video I will refer to all of them as research handbooks. The advent of book-length research handbooks like these dates from about the mid-1980s. They really started getting off the ground only in the 1990s. These titles were a response to the rapid increase in academic publishing in prior decades. It may be hard to imagine from our perspective in the Internet era, but the 1960s, 70s, and 80s experienced their own information explosion of print resources. It was in an effort to exert some kind of control over this chaotic deluge of academic publishing that these handbooks began to appear. They are still quite useful today, especially in their ability to organize the literature on a topic. Because the authors have done a thorough job of bibliographic researching for you, they can save you a lot of time. Research handbooks on music topics are not too hard to find. They are mostly in the ML 128 and ML 134 sections of the library collection. The thing is, there are a lot of other types of materials in these same call number ranges, such as thematic catalogs or repertoire handbooks, so finding them by browsing the shelves might require a little judgment. You can also try searching the library catalog by subject, adding the word bibliography, as for instance, violin bibliography. This search would be effective in discovering the violin, a research and information guide, but will also turn up a number of repertoire guides listing various types of violin music. Of course, many research handbooks contain well-developed sections that list repertoire within a certain genre, so there is considerable overlap here. What makes actual research handbooks different is that they contain a variety of different kinds of sources on their topic. In this video, we will explore a small but hopefully representative selection of research handbooks in order to get a glimpse into the kinds of structure and organization you're liable to find. By the end of this video, I hope you'll realize that these books can be a very useful tool for finding information on research topics. We will start by looking at Edward Elgar, a sourcebook by Stuart Craggs. Then we will examine Giancarlo Menotti, a biobibliography by Donald Hickson, and Aaron Copeland, a guide to research by Marta Robertson and Robin Armstrong. The last title we will look at is not on a composer but on an instrument, The Violin, a research and information guide by Mark Katz. Stuart Craggs' Edward Elgar, a sourcebook, is published by Scholar Press. It's not easy to find information on Scholar Press, but searching in WorldCat or the DU Library Catalog reveals that they are certainly an academic publisher represented by a large number of titles in a variety of fields. They seem to have gotten their start in the late 1960s, producing facsimile reprint editions, and later began publishing original scholarly works, not a rare pattern in academic publishing. They were later acquired by Ashgate Publishing, which was in turn acquired by Routledge, one of the larger academic publishers. Stuart Craggs was a British librarian, not especially noted for his scholarship on Elgar, but who published a number of similar research handbooks, all of them on British composers, from 1988 through 2007. The front matter of this work includes a foreword and compiler's note. The foreword is written by Percy Young, who is in fact a noted scholar on Elgar. Percy Young's biography in Grove 7 lists 6 books he wrote on Edward Elgar or his wife Alice. This compiler's note is Stuart Craggs' chance to check in with the reader. Among other things, he takes this opportunity to acknowledge the assistance of the most important Elgar scholars in preparing his book. As we have noted elsewhere in connection with monographs and essay collections, these names are a valuable resource for anyone wanting to dig deeper into Elgar research. At least they were when the book was published in 1995. Since it is now more than 20 years old, this information, like much of the information in the book, is slowly but surely going out of date. The main body of this book is divided into 6 sections: alphabetical lists of main compositions, chronology, catalogue raisonné, recordings, collections, and select bibliography. The first section, alphabetical list of main compositions, is a 13-page index of compositions by title, reference to the page number of the entry for each composition in the catalogue raisonné part of the book. In a lot of research handbooks, this section would have been consigned to the back matter and just called Index of Compositions. Most works of this type contain some kind of basic biographical information, but it takes different forms. In this book, the biographical information is presented in the next section, a 23-page chronology of the events of Elgar's life, including life events, when he received important honors, when certain pieces were performed, etc. The next section of the book is the longest part, at 70 pages, the catalogue raisonné. A catalogue raisonné is just like a thematic catalogue, but without the musical incipits that a thematic catalogue has. Like a thematic catalogue, a catalogue raisonné may be more or less comprehensive in the information it offers. This one lists pieces by year of composition. Under each year, pieces are listed alphabetically by title. Each entry for a piece may or may not also include a description of the piece, the circumstances of its composition, its first performance, or its publication, also any dedication, the authors of texts, and so on. Listing pieces by year of composition helps place them in historical sequence, but also makes the index of titles necessary. After the catalogue raisonné comes a 16-page discography. A complete discography of Elgar would be prohibitively large, so this one is limited to recordings of Elgar's music where Elgar himself participated as a conductor. Of course, this means it does not include chamber music. Pieces are listed alphabetically by title, with information on recordings under each piece. Listings of recordings include names of artists or ensembles, date, and place of recording. If more than one recording is listed, they are arranged chronologically. If a given recording was released more than once, multiple record label catalog numbers are given. The next section, Collections, is one of the shortest. It's a 6-page list of institutions or individuals holding significant collections of primary source material relating to Elgar, mostly correspondence, manuscripts, and ephemera. The last section of the main body of the work, Select Bibliography, is the second largest section after the catalogue raisonné. Select in this context means that it is only a selection of what is available. It does not pretend to be complete. It is a 50-page bibliography of articles, books, theses, reviews, record liner notes, and other documents about Elgar. The bibliography is organized into sections by topic and alphabetically by author within each section. All the topics turn out to be particular compositions, except for the topic General, which deals with biographical information about Elgar and discussions of his works as a body. The bibliographic entries here do not include annotations. They are unannotated. The main reservation to be considered in connection with this bibliography is the date of the book itself. Any serious search for literature about Elgar should include using databases to try to find material that has been published since 1995. This is not an issue, of course, in connection with the discography or the lists of Elgar's compositions, since Elgar himself has not been around to add new material to these categories. The back matter of the book has only one element, a simple 6-page general index. Although it is called a general index, it is really just an index of names of persons and groups that are mentioned elsewhere in the book, along with, in a few cases, titles of compositions by other composers that are referenced in the titles of articles listed in the bibliography section. Donald Hickson's Giancarlo Menotti, A Biobibliography, is part of a series published by Greenwood Press, Biobibliographies in Music. A little research on Greenwood Press tells us that they're an academic publisher founded in 1967, and that today they are part of ABC Clio, a family-owned educational publisher with roots that go back to 1955. Donald Hickson was fine arts librarian at the University of California, Irvine from 1968 to 1992. He was series editor for the Biobibliographies in Music series and authored another volume in the series on Thea Musgrave. He also has some other bibliographic works to his credit in the fields of music and drama, so the credentials of this author and publisher are pretty good. In addition, this book is number 77 in the series, a fact which might inspire confidence in us that the series had gained wide acceptance and that the publisher knew something about what they were doing. This volume has a brief front matter made up of a table of contents, preface, and a section of acknowledgments. The preface describes the structure of the book, which is particularly important in a book of this kind where understanding the details of indexing can help us find things more quickly. We discussed the background importance of the acknowledgments in connection with the previous title. It is worth noting that this book, published in 2000, is rather newer than the one we just saw in Elgar, so this and other information may be assumed to be correspondingly more current. The main body of this work is divided into three sections: biography, general references, and works and performances. Inspecting the biography, we see that rather than a simple timeline of events, this work contains a narrative biographical sketch, about 16 pages plus a handful of endnotes. The next section, general references, is similar to the general section in the select bibliography of the Elgar book. This is a 32-page bibliography of references to journal articles, reviews, newspaper interviews, books, and so on about Menotti in general. Some are annotated and some are not. Whereas in the Elgar book there were only very few bibliographic references to materials in languages other than English, here there are numerous citations to materials in French, German, Italian, Polish, and so on. Each citation in this section has an index number starting with G to make it easier to reference specific items from the author index at the back. The Works and Performances section, at 239 pages, is the bulk of this book. Although not labeled as such, it is essentially a catalog raisonné like the one in the Elgar book. The organization is different, however. In this case, the works are arranged alphabetically by title, rather than chronologically by year of composition. Each piece is labeled with an index number beginning with W, just as citations in the general references are given numbers beginning with G. In this catalog raisonné, entries are sometimes brief, sometimes quite long and complex. For instance, after each work is a section of citations to literature specifically about the work, as opposed to the general references in the previous section. There is a list of premieres and other important performances of that work arranged chronologically. If reviews of these performances are available, they're cited after each performance. After performances, recordings are listed in a discography for the work, with complete recordings first, then recordings of excerpts. If reviews are available for the recordings, they are listed together after the section for the recordings. The entry for Amal and the Night Visitors is a good example of an entry showing all these levels of organization. The work is given the number W3. An article about the work in the August 1949 issue of Southwest Musician is given the number W3.1. The broadcast television premiere in December 1951 is numbered W3.10. Note that this is not a true decimal number in the mathematical sense, since 3.10 comes after 3.9. You see this a lot in bibliographic indexes. A review of the premiere in Musical Courier is numbered W3.10a. The original 1951 cast recording is numbered W3.64, and a review of that recording along with some others is numbered W3.72. By contrast, the entry for Menotti's 1995 Gloria, W29, is just a single line. The back matter of this book consists of two appendices, a chronological list of works and a genre list of works, and two indexes, an author index and a performer index. The chronological list of works is a necessary adjunct to the main works list. We saw that in the Elgar book, the works list was arranged chronologically, but the author supplied an alphabetical list by title, keyed to the main list to make it easier to find a composition. This book takes the opposite approach, arranging the main list by title and supplementing it with a chronological list, using the W numbers to refer from the chronological list to the main list. The author here has also added another list, arranged by genre, so that the reader may see all the operas grouped together, or all the ballets, or the solo instrumental works, and so on. The author index and performer index do not use page number references, but rather reference the G and W numbers of entries where particular names are mentioned. Thus, looking up the name of Winthrop Sargent in the author index references G2 in the general references, which is an article in the June 1st, 1947 issue of Life magazine, as well as W14.25A in the Works and Performances, which is a review of a New York City opera performance in the February 27, 1960 issue of New Yorker magazine. The performer index is similar, except that it only references W numbers, since performers are only referenced with regard to performances or recordings in the works list. Marta Robertson and Robin Armstrong's Aaron Copland, A Guide to Research, is number 53 in the Composer Resource Manual series published by the respected academic press Routledge. Remember that Routledge ultimately became the owner of Scholar Press, the publisher of the Elgar book. The About the Authors page at the back indicates that both authors have some credentials either in American music or in scholarship on Aaron Copland, though they are not particularly eminent. The front matter of the book includes only a single preface, but this is unusually detailed, including an overview of the literature on Copland, a description of the structure of the book, the selection criteria and sources used by the authors. The preface is also well documented with endnotes, as was the one in the Menotti book. The main body of this work is divided into 9 different sections. Section 1, A Guide to Studies on Aaron Copland, is a brief essay on the state of scholarship on Copland and argues for a holistic approach that considers each of Copland's works in the context of his overall identity as a composer. Section 2, Chronology of Life and Works, harkens more to the approach of the Elgar book than to that of the Menotti book. It's a 27-page timeline from Copland's birth in 1900 to his death in 1991 and beyond to his centenary celebration in 2000. It has 3 concurrent tracks: biography, writings, and compositions. Some undated compositions are listed at the end. Section 3, Primary Sources, Copland's Writings, at 112 pages, is by far the largest section of this book and reflects the philosophy that since Copland was a particularly prolific writer, the best authority on Copland is Copland himself. This section is divided into subsections for books and essay collections, for individual articles and essays, and for interviews with Copland by other authors. The entries in this section are especially well annotated, as are most of the bibliographic sections of the book. Sections 4 and 5 are devoted to secondary sources. Section 4 lists general studies on Copland, and Section 5 is devoted to writings on Copland's compositions. Section 4 is 13 pages and Section 5 is 21 pages, indicating a far greater literature on the compositions than on the artist himself. Both sections, but especially Section 5, are broken down by category and subcategory, making it relatively easy to find specific kinds of material. Section 6, Topical Studies, is very brief at only 4 pages. The subcategory, Copland as mentor/teacher, is actually empty. Nothing is listed here. The authors indicate in their preface that the organization of this section is partly meant to advocate for the importance of these approaches to understanding Copland in the future. Section 7, Tributes and Obituaries, is the only section of the book that does not contain annotations. All of the other sections are notable for the extent of annotation of each entry. Section 8, Foreign Language Sources, is unusual to begin with, as books of this type usually list non-English language sources together with sources in English. It's even more curious in that there is only one source listed here, a journal article in French. In the preface, the authors seem to indicate that they did this just to underline the lack of scholarship on Copland outside the English-speaking world. It would be interesting to see if this has changed at all since this book was published in 2001. Section 9, Bibliographies and Discographies, is a short list of sources, mostly on recordings of Copland's music, but it also includes an earlier work similar to the present one, Aaron Copland, a Biobibliography, from 1985. The back matter of this book has not 2 indexes, but 3, a particularly generous investment of time in making the content available to various kinds of queries. There is an author index, a title index, and a subject index. Like the indexes in the Menotti book, index entries here reference entry numbers rather than page numbers. Though this is not evident at first glance, the indexes each take the time to tell us if we take the time to look. Our last research handbook is The Violin, a Research and Information Guide by Mark Katz. Katz is a humanities professor at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, according to his biography on the UNC website, and a former professor at Peabody Conservatory. His UNC bio says that in addition to his academic pursuits, he is a violinist and an amateur turntablist, as well as holding down a DJ slot at the campus radio station. Routledge is a name we already know from the Copland book we just finished looking at. In fact, this book is part of the same Routledge Music Bibliographies series. A list of the other titles in the series, at least as of 2006, is offered on the page facing the title page, just for added credibility. Note that although the composer titles are much more numerous, there are a good number of genre bibliographies here as well, of which this is one. This book has an especially intricate organization with many sections, subsections, and sub-subsections. The table of contents alone takes up 3 pages. Fortunately, the front matter includes an introduction with explicit instructions on how to use the book. The main body of this book is divided into 5 sections: reference and general studies, acoustics and construction, violin playing and performance practice, violin music, and violinists, violinist composers, and violin teachers. The first section, reference and general studies, is short, just over a dozen pages. We immediately notice the quality and completeness of the annotations and individual entries. Like all the sections, this one is broken down by subtopic in a very organized way. You will see in this section and in other sections, and on the level of the book as a whole, that general information sources are listed first, with specialized sources coming afterwards. This is a common organizing principle that also underlies the most important systems of library classification. Note that Item 1 under the subtopic General Music Reference, the first entry in the whole book, is the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, 2nd edition. Yay, go Grove! The second section, Acoustics and Construction, deals with the instrument as a physical artifact. This section is longer at about 75 pages. There are subsections on the physical properties of the violin, on construction and repair, on notable makers, a separate subsection just dealing with the bow, and subsections on collecting, dealing, and authenticating violins. Cross-referencing is prevalent throughout this book. The numbers in curly brackets at the beginning of page 19, after the word "see also," reference numbered entries elsewhere in the book. Violin playing and performance practice is the next main section of the book, somewhat shorter at 50 pages. Most of the section is taken up by the historical and pedagogical material, though there are also sections on competitions and on health issues of violinists. The section addressing recording technology has only 2 entries, both of them historical in nature. One is an early article from 1915 on recording the sound of the violin, and the other a retrospective look from 1959 at early violin recordings. The fourth section, Violin Music, is the longest section of the book at 130 pages. This section deals with the repertoire. It does not index actual repertoire, of course, but indexes repertoire guides, checklists, and descriptive or analytic studies of various kinds. The last section, Violinists, Violinist Composers, and Violin Teachers, indexes material about noted personalities in the violin playing world. At 100 pages, it's the longest section after the repertoire section. The bulk of this section, at 85 pages, is devoted to the last subsection, individual biographies. This book, like the Aaron Copland book before it, has 3 indexes: an author index, a name index, and a subject index. In all, a respectable 33 pages of indexing. It goes without saying that you have to be sure you're in the right index before you try to look something up. It does not go without saying that here again, the indexes reference entry numbers in the book rather than page numbers. This might seem a little annoying if you're not accustomed to it, but in fact, it's a much more precise form of indexing, since you don't have to waste time scanning a whole page for the thing you're looking for. In the Menotti book, this was obvious from the G and W numbers. In the Copland book, there was a discreet notice at the beginning of each index telling us about it. But in the present book, there is literally no mention of this aspect of the indexing, not even in the How to Use This Book section of the introduction. Well, no matter, you would probably figure it out around the time you started looking for page 1225 in a 400-page book. Still, it would be nice to be told. Our survey of research handbooks in music has looked at 4 titles, including representatives of some of the most important publisher series. We have seen important variations in the organization of material, the extent of annotation, and indexing of the content of the guides themselves. We've looked at how to find these guides in the library, with the understanding that there is no single foolproof way to find them all. Remember that if you can't find a particular research handbook on the shelf, we may have it as an online ebook, or if it is checked out or not in our collection, you're likely to be able to access it through ILL or Prospector. The thorough bibliographic research that goes into these handbooks, along with the extensive annotation in many of them, make them a recommended early destination on your research journey.